before we begin, we're just going to go through a little bit of an overview about what we're going to be talking about today. And that is, what is intelligence? How many different kinds of intelligence exist? We're also going to go through some sex differences in the brain in regards to intelligence, and sex differences in self-estimation of multiple intelligences. Then we're going to talk about sex differences in intelligence at different ages, particularly age 7, 11, and 16 years old. Then we're going to talk about, personally, my most interesting topic, intelligence in the X chromosome. And we're going to go through some conclusions, limitations of current research, and proposals for future research, along with a little video from Stephen Hawking about artificial intelligence.
What is intelligence? And it's hard to have define it. It's very debatable, and many times we look at people and we're like, this person's intelligent, or it's very much like a prediction on how they would do in the future. But it's very practical for people to think of intelligence as something that does exist, and whether science should consider intelligence and how it would define remains it's still very controversial.
So intelligence has been defined as the ability to deal adaptively with the changing environment, to benefit from past experience, and to proceed in a goal-directed fashion or to pursue productive avenues of problem solving, and to perceive common properties in otherwise separate domains. So essentially this is saying that you learn, and as you learn you get better at things, and as you get better you become more intelligent, and then you can adapt and change with your environment instead of being abrasive and holding against it. Now, we're going to come back to this theory of nature versus nurture. This comes up in almost every theory of psychological sciences and social sciences in general. Nature versus nurture. Which one of them holds more ground? Which one of them holds more validity in intelligence? Well, several studies have looked at monozygotic twins that were reared apart, and they show a correlation of about 0.7 in their intelligence quotient. So this indicates about 70% of the observed variation is due to genetics.
There are two theories of intelligence, and a very common theory is the single factor theory, that cognitive ability is kind of uniform, and that's proposed by Charles Spearman, who talked about the G factor. It's called general intelligence, and people with this they are able to perform multiple tasks by just having that that general intelligence, and they can do very demanding cognitive abilities, and this would be they can test this through that one G factor. The second theory is the intelligence is divided in distinct categories, and this could be kind of defined as multiple intelligence. People have a very very domain specific. People have different categories that they're intelligent in, and there's no single factor that would define their performance, and it's a wide range of categories that make them perform the way they do. So multiple types of intelligence. It was first Dr. Howard Gardner was the one who first proposed this, and his theory was very it was kind of a new theory, challenging the traditional the theory that cognitive is very it's a very uniform kind of thing, and and that's usually tested with one test, but he proposed that it's it's a lot of categories, and that interacts, and that's how you interact with the world, and you should test it's not one test that you determine if you are intelligent or not. So naturalistic is being attuned to nature and knowing species and taxonomy, I believe, and musical, if you are very good with pitch and tone. Logical, mathematical is good with numbers, and interpersonal is knowing being able to interact with people. Body, kinesthetic, dancers, people who are good with body, mind, kind of using that are have interpersonal, not interpersonal, body, kinetic, kinesthetic intelligence. Linguistic is being able to like talk, like very language-oriented communication. Intrapersonal is knowing yourself, who you are, all like your feelings, being able to decipher that. Spatial, kind of like moving three-dimensional objects, and existential is kind of like philosophy. It's hard to define, knowing like what thinking about why the world exists, and like very like deep stuff. So that's like existential. And just like looking at this, you can kind of like, there are some stereotypes that, or like even like brain, that's like through research that you can say that some men could be like better at spatial, and you can say like mathematical, but women could be better at interpersonal, or also at like intrapersonal, and there is some research backing that up.
Go back for a second. Before we move on, I'd like to draw your attention to musical, the second type. For me, this one stands out a lot because I relate it to not only artists and musicians in general, but the way you live your life. Like, I try to do everything in my life with a particular flow, with a particular flux. I'm always in motion, and I'm always, trying to stay on path. But if something comes up in my way, I don't try to, slam right through it. I'll try to like water, move my way around it. And I think musical has a lot to do with resonance and the way you vibrate and just the way you carry yourself throughout the world. So it doesn't have to be particularly an instrument or something like that.
Yeah, it's very much like just like knowing like musical like knowledge on anything, like the resonance. Also differences in brains in between men and women. There is difference, but that does not correlate to one being more intelligent like than the other. Men's brains are 10 to 15% larger than women's brains, and they also weigh more. Men have a greater proportion of white matter, and women have a greater proportion of gray matter. And also the cortex for women is, they're slightly thicker and more convoluted. The hippocampus and amygdala is larger in men, but it's still the difference is not. It's not the intelligence that's what's different, but it's more like how they process the information from the world that they get in their brains. That is, that's different, and how it's different because they have like different brain structures.
Exactly. Just because men's brains are 10 to 15% larger does not make them better, not by any means. We know that women's brains are more intricately connected. They have more circuits going through the corpus callosum, which is the bundle of axons, connecting the two hemispheres. We know that they have stronger connections in the language centers, particularly Broca's and Wernicke's area. So they're able to get out their emotions. They're able to communicate in stronger ways than men are. When men get angry, our right hemispheres lighten up, and we're just going to get, we're going to do a physical action. We're going to do something bad, as opposed to women who might want to talk down the situation. Yes.
I don't know if you guys read anything, but there are some studies that claim that the men's brain is simply larger because it's more proportionate to their body size.
That's absolutely true. I was about to touch on that. Yes.
Oh,
and we also
sorry.
know, no, it's okay. We also know that males' skeletons are about 10% to 15% thicker than females. We have denser bones. We also have more muscle mass. I think about 10 to 15% more as well, which would again be proportional to the bone increase. So yes, everything on males in general is just a little bit larger. Like I said, it doesn't mean that it's better.
And there was a study that on brain activity between men and women, and it was their resting brains, which was very fascinating because they used like an EEG for it, and they found that like men's brain when it's resting doesn't have that much activity, but like women's brain is always like firing, always like there's something going on. So kind of like if you were to like ask like a guy like, hey, like what are you thinking? It's actually like sometimes they don't think anything because like they're able to like zone out, and like it's something that men have and women don't apparently have that much because it's always like something's always going on. And it was some of the like the results for the study. It said that like highly intelligent men, they have a greater decoupling of the frontal brain area, and highly intelligent female have more coupling between frontal, parietal, and occipital brain areas. And you can just see like both of them are intelligent, but men have a very like one part that's like it's one part that's more specialized, and women have multiple parts that's
and so if men are decoupling the frontal areas, that would leave the posterior areas unbridled, which would give the opportunity for creative processing, or if women are keeping their frontal lobes coupled, then they're putting more inhibitory influences on those posterior activities.
Yeah. So it's like, it's very interesting how it's like both have like, you know, their brain enables them to do something more easier than the other.
Okay, so I'm just going to go over a few basic sex differences in intelligence. Now, the distribution of IQ scores are bell-shaped. They're average, you know, across the board between males and females. However, what we do notice is a little bit of variability in the male. We find that males tend to score on the outliers, on the very, very far ends of the spectrum. So we have these males that are out, you know, completely in genius land, and then on the opposite end of the spectrum, males that are, you know, struggling to do simple math problems at the same time. So females tend to be, you know, in the middle. They're just, you know, they encompass most of the average, while males have this tendency to fall on the outliers. Now we have the emotional intelligence quiz. This one's from Berkeley, and we're gonna do it, you know, guys and girls, everyone just write down your scores.
Yeah, and it's kind of like testing interpersonal intelligence, so we'll see. Women are supposed to be better. Okay. The faces are kind of funny, so.
So just write down 1 and then A, B, C, or D, whatever you want, what the space is. And you can write the word down, whatever you use. What is the average? What do you guys think it is?
How it feels to chew 5 gum.
You can click that right here.
A new weird flavor that intensifies as you chew.
That was a fun. Oh, yeah.
So yeah, what did the average of you guys think? What did everyone think? Which one?
Fear?
It's like fear.
Oh, embarrassing.
Embarrassment? Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was embarrassing.
Put embarrassment to that.
Let's see.
Keep your answers.
Oh, it was fear. I was
All right.
incorrect.
Next question.
Next question.
Write down what do you guys think?
Yeah, let me know if you guys can read it.
Hugh? What do you think?
I would say politeness.
Anyone else?
His eyes aren't smiling.
Anyone else?
Politeness.
Top line? All right, let's go. Go for it.
Happiness, oh my God.
He's a bad actor. He's not.
It's like fake real smile here.
Oh.
Okay.
I think it's like hard to tell people like this.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
it's like the description is saying like it's defined by 2 muscle movements. The movement common to small smiles. Like, wow.
What do you guys think this guy's doing?
If you guys like saw someone like look like that in real life, like,
Yeah.
I know I'm kind of scared.
Mm.
Dr. Berkeley.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
I hate to say it, but it's just like one of Cho's faces on this video.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Angry? Angry, okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, cool. We'll just do a few more of these. Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah. I think I know what he's going for. Poorly executed, that's
seen that are using a male, because female spaces are much more expressive.
Yeah, that would be.
Ekman
Perfect sense.
used all females in his initial study.
I remember that.
Well,
I said it was used.
Yeah.
okay.
I said embarrassed.
I was gonna say, that's what I would have put. Let's try
It's
using
like
it.
small.
Let's try using it though. Embarrassed is what I would have said. Okay.
See, I'm doing, just to chime in, I'm doing the research, like nonverbal communication,
Okay.
and the tests like these, they're not correlated with anything because the words used are too vague, and because using one or two models is not okay. So basically what they're saying is that in order to define one emotion, you need to have like 5 different people doing the same emotion in order to test a baseline.
I agree.
And that's like what my whole paper's on, is just how vague these tests are.
I agree. Yeah, this is pretty,
Yeah, I feel like people make very general faces for like different emotions, but it varies individually. It's like, I guess I can see like why you need a lot more people to like.
what do you guys think this would be? This would be our last one.
I think we can count.
Which one?
Is that what it is? Okay. Or I don't know what it's in.
Hi. She needs to be smiling.
Pour herself in a light
Yeah.
smile.
It's upward thing is what that would like fit the perfect thing for contempt though. She's like looking down on somebody.
And if you're smiling a little bit, I can't see a smile from this angle anyway.
That's right. I think it's just the cheeks are like in.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, and her eyebrows are lifted. In contempt, they tend to be closer to the eyes. That's true.
Okay. All right, that'll be it for this quiz.
Let's see. Do you see like the difference between men and women?
On the spatial thing?
Yeah, let's do the spatial.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have one more quick game. This one,
Bless
I
you.
think on the next slide, yeah. You go over there. Yep, Cambridge. So this one I found to be incredibly fun. I found this online. It's very quick, it's very fast paced. So essentially you have 2 questions, or 2 answers, A or B. So just write these down, I guess, see how you do. So essentially 2 blocks are gonna appear, and you're just gonna say, could this one on the right be flipped, rotated in some way?
Oh, God.
Like the wall.
Oh,
Yeah, so this
God.
is kind of a, okay,
It's not too bad.
testosterone oriented thing.
Not
but
too bad.
Straight out.
Oh gosh. Oh my god.
it's a little loud. Okay, so is it match or mismatch? What is it? No, is it mismatch? Okay, okay. Match.
Mismatch. Match. Mismatch. Mismatch.
Good job.
Match.
Match.
Match. Mismatch. Mismatch. Match. Mismatch.
Match.
Okay. That's one. Come on.
Match.
You can try it in 3 seconds. Match. All right, good job.
Very nice, guys.
So what strategies did you guys employ to do that?
Listen to other people.
Okay, besides maybe listening to the people.
Try to like count. I don't know. Try to count how many were like free, like out in free space and compare the two.
I kind of found myself working around the perimeter and
Yeah.
seeing if certain ones were either next to each other or spread apart, and if you could, rotate it, if they would ever be close. That's what. Cool. All right. Hope you guys had a good time with that. Let's go. And maybe later, if you guys want,
There's
there's
time.
another like super hard mental
Yeah.
so we're going to talk a little bit about sex differences in self-estimation in multiple intelligences. So now this isn't exactly telling you how intelligent anyone is, it's going about their perceived intelligence and what they estimate someone's intelligence to be. So overall, the participants rated themselves as brighter than their mothers and fathers, which is probably what you would expect to occur, given, you know, it was across all age ranges. But you would assume that the younger participants in general would rate themselves brighter than their mothers and fathers. But the difference was not statistically significant. Males rated themselves higher overall on, you know, mathematical, spatial, the things that you would expect males to be better at, they rated themselves higher on.
Spiritual?
Spiritual, actually, yeah. That one, I'm not exactly sure.
Also
Naturalistic,
naturalistic.
not sure. Maybe they're like talking about caveman-ish type thing, working with their hands, like tools. I don't know where they were going with that one. The spiritual, actually, that's surprising.
The study, they were atypical Portuguese, and they were more female oriented. They were like, the study said that they're like a female kind of, I don't know how to explain that, but like, it's more of like things that you would expect female to be intelligent at, but the men were.
Could it be that men are more dominant in some of these religions, like that they are the, you know,
Absolutely,
person
yes.
who controls something?
I have to complain. I hate Howard Gardner because when I started teaching him, he had 7 types of intelligence. And then he had
Has
8.
10.
And your chart had 9, and now we have 10.
I agree.
And I'm wondering, you know, is he going to do the Galton thing and end up with 16,000?
Yeah,
Because that's what Galton ended up with, so.
There's a lot of like,
Types of intelligence?
Yeah.
Yeah. 16,000? 16, yeah.
yeah. And his like criticism ranges from like is it like just talents or like, you know, little like he just like makes a lot of like different like I don't know, but yeah, they said like this is very interesting. Well, actually,
In some of them, he called spiritual cosmic.
yeah,
Your ability to perceive where you fit in.
In the universe.
in the
existential
universe.
intelligence. I think.
Interesting.
How would you measure that?
How did you do that?
He says they're all independent. You can knock out various brain areas and not disturb the other ones. And I also have trouble seeing that.
Like they're not interconnected.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So multiple regressions indicated that there was a significant predictor for verbal, logical, and interpersonal intelligence, and the parents' overall IQ estimations. And there's a few facts of the study is that less than a quarter of them have ever taken an IQ test. About a quarter believe that intelligence was inherited, so they fall under the genetics category that they believe that you get your intelligence through your genes, through your parents, not through your environment. And about a third believe that some races were actually more intelligent than others, and that IQ tests measured intelligence very well, which I personally don't believe because IQ is just, you know, one measure of your intelligence, as we've seen that there are many types of different intelligence. And one limitation to the study is they could have actually tested, you know, for the people's actual IQ instead of just having them estimate, you know, they could have actually tested for it and then, you know, found correlations within that.
And just to add to this study, like I thought it was interesting, like how men and women had like a self-fulfilling prophecy in their estimation. So like what like they thought was like, you know, they would be like if they were thinking like men are probably going to be better at spatial or you know mathematics, and I'll be like a girl would be better at like interpersonal, and it would kind of like it would kind of be a little bit correlated. If I'm right, I don't think it was a little bit significant.
So we're going to shift gears a little bit to differences in intelligence at different ages, particularly age 7, 11, and 16. Now this is very interesting. I found this incredibly intriguing. Results show that at age 7 and 11, girls had an IQ advantage of about 1 point over the males. But then these same boys and girls after age 16, there was a change, a little bit of a change in the IQ, to where the males gained an advantage of about 1.8 IQ points. So why do you guys think that females would start off more intelligent than males, if at all? Why do you guys think that? And why would it flip? We know, I was about to say, we know that girls' brains appear to develop after they appear, you know, become more mature, and males take a little bit of a longer time to hook up to the frontal cortex, you know, around mid-20s as I understand it. Any other theories?
And also, aren't girls like better readers and things at a young age, so maybe they're better at taking the test at a younger age than boys are? Maybe that can test differences.
I question, when we were doing the quizzes, Seth, you and I were often shouting out this stuff pretty fast. Were you worried about what other people were gonna say, or were you just worried about what you were gonna say?
I'm just worried about what I was gonna say.
How about you, Sydney?
Some of them I shouted out quickly, and if I was unsure, I waited. If I knew, I said
Thank
it.
you for being honest with me. Thank you.
I just kind of think that competitiveness is maintained in males, probably because of testosterone. And women become less competitive. It's not a good thing to be competitive. And so they're not going to put forth their utmost effort. It's not a personal challenge.
So you think maybe males perceive it as something to be competitive with, and not want to be?
Yeah, I mean, even that little game I did want to get them right. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
that was kind of one of the things.
And
I would have too,
everybody
but I
else
wasn't trying to
did.
play.
You wanted to get them right for you,
Yeah.
and you wanted to blend in.
Very intriguing point, Professor. So yeah, there's a quote from, the researchers. Since females are in competition with other females for reproductive success, females who mature earlier can, start reproducing earlier, and then they can have access to men, while their age mates, their friends who haven't reached puberty cannot, because back in the day we used to get together, as soon as we were able to, and the more mates you had, the more chance you had of reproducing. Okay, now we're going to talk about intelligence in the X chromosome. This is probably the most intriguing part of this presentation to me. So as we know, females have two X's, two X chromosomes, and the male have the XY. Well, since the females have this extra piece on their other X chromosome, while they're being developed, it becomes methylated and inactivated randomly during development. As I understand this, I'm no biochemist, but when you methylate anything, it will inactivate it. I think you take away a hydrogen and you add a methyl group, which I'm not sure what entails that. But so it's inactivated for the rest of her life. She's going to have these genes shut off forever. Now males don't have this. We don't have this advantage. So what's going to happen? They're either going to become more advantageous or expressed in a mutational way. So if a male has a beneficial mutation on his gene, he could then become specialized in any particular area, whatever your imagination would please. But if he also has a mutational gene and this becomes expressed, the male will then have difficulties in certain areas. But the female has this kind of a safety mechanism that will shut down part of one of her X chromosomes. I like this particular quote from the research. In day-to-day practical evolutionary terms, for our new millennium, the male needs to remember that his primitive urges in mate selection are coded in his genome, and that they target current ideals of social attractiveness in youth. His frontal cortex should interpose, reminding him that his son's intelligence, if that is important to him, is solely dependent on his partner, and that is mirrored in both of her parents. The female has more freedom to choose. She may be driven to mate by her partner's physique, but the brightness of her child lies mainly within her. So essentially, these researchers believe that the X chromosome contains intelligence and is what passes down our intelligence.
Well,
Now,
it has so many more genes on it. Is that what they're arguing? Like
yes,
15
as I
different-
understand it, yes. There's more genes, and there's more possibility for different combinations of these genes to be expressed in different ways of intelligence. So this is kind of counterintuitive, at least in my opinion, because males have been known to go for females who are attractive just on a physical basis. But if this research comes through and, in the next 5-10 years, more studies come out that proves this, that females are actually the ones who pass down most of intelligence as opposed to males, this is going to rewrite how males should, arbitrarily, how we should think about females in our mate selection. And instead of going for girls just because they're hot or sexy, we're going to go for them because they're smart, because they're intelligent, because our kids are going to be benefited from that.
Ina, I have a question. Could what you were saying on the X chromosome, you were saying it's basically for the male to go either poorly or well, because that explains for the IQ difference and why they're spread out, and then
Absolutely,
why they're
exactly. I was actually going to talk about that, but I forgot. Thank you for reminding me.
But you also you're suffering from a cultural prejudice there. There are subgroups within our culture that are attracted to intelligent females, or at least that's what I've been told.
Okay.
Judaism honors the very intelligent female. And the more degrees you get, the more attractive you are.
That's something I'm not, you know, I'm a Catholic. I've grown up Catholic my whole life. And women are attractive, but I always value them for their smarts and intelligence. And I don't see that in most of my male friends. I'll say that. I don't see that in most of them. They're just like, oh man, like, she's very attractive, very whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that's great, but if they can't stimulate my mind, I'm gone. It's lost. I need someone to stimulate my thoughts and get my imagination going.
Do they find like other findings for like girls, like I guess looking for guys? Like what does it look for? Just like
Resources.
Resources is the main thing. I based from all the research I've done and looked into is resources are like the number one thing. What the male can provide the female, because humans, the female has to put more reproductive resources into mating and into having a child. The male could just leave his sperm and leave. But if he can constantly be bringing her resources, food, shelter, weapons to stay protected, that's something that she would, want.
It would also help, being like, it's like, because I feel like a lot of times when we look, it's like very like instant, like either like, and that might be biologically related because it's like a very instant, like, oh, this person is something that's like somebody who's appealing to us or not, and that could be, very, like it could be because of like biology or society. So, the conclusions, like concluding this, overall intelligence is also, like there's so many different ways to define intelligence. So it's, all the subtypes, it's hard to like have like one definition for it. And recent like research sheds new light on, what he talks about, the social mating selection and how that could differ depending on the society.
Right.
Possible points to the idea that women could adapt to hold, physique in higher regard than intelligence. And intelligence differences do indeed exist, but does that make one sex better than the other? And that's still very debated. And do you guys have any opinion? Like, I know it's like kind of like, it's hard to really say, yeah.
Would you guys say is one sex more intelligent than the other, male and females? Or are they the same?
It's too much individuality.
Well, I don't think you can compare it like that.
Yeah,
just because
it's
all the different types, like you're just talking about, there's different ways.
Exactly. That's how I look at it. Is that they're specialized. That men are good at certain things and women are good at certain things, and together we're good at everything. Together we're good at everything. We can do everything together, right? So I don't think that makes anyone better than the other. It's just two pieces to the puzzle.
And even like with like all the research, it's like also very individualized, and so like some women could be better at things that men are good at, and women could, it's like even like that study with like the estimated like the Portuguese people, like they were good at what women would be good at. So it's like it's hard to really say there's a better sex with
Any
definitive
condition.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to go over a few limitations to the current research, and it comes up time and time again, technological advancements. Just about 100 years ago, we had some of the most famous scientists on this planet, at least in psychology. We had B.F. Skinner and John B. Watson saying that the brain was a black box, that it was this thing that we had no idea what it was, what it could do, what it was capable of, but we knew that information went in. We knew that and that data came out. But what happened inside this black box was a total mystery. So they just wrote it off and then it actually turned into behaviorism. What we have is behaviorism, which is a great field to study, which is great. You find out a lot of information about behaviorism. But in my opinion, you should not just rule out something just because you don't understand it and just literally call it a black box. So we have now, in the past 20 years or so, MRI machines, fMRI machines, we have these technological advancements where we are starting to be able to see into the brain. We're starting to be able to see what's going on. And in time, hopefully I want to get it down to a subatomic level where we can look at the neural connections between two neurons so microscopically that you could just, like on an Apple iPhone, you could just keep zooming in and zooming in. I want to be able to go into literally almost to the proton level down there. Because once we can do that, we can map everybody's brain and see exactly what's going on. If you have any deficiencies in any way, shape, or form, we'll be able to tell instantly. Now this is going to take some time, obviously, but we've made tremendous leaps in this field. And another reason I don't think, another limitation to this research is that intelligence is not stagnant. It's fluid in time. It's constantly changing, constantly evolving. As society gets better and more technologically advanced, what we perceive to be intelligent may or may not change. Also, yeah, proposals for future research, artificial intelligence. Do you guys think that artificial intelligence will ever be able to compete with us humans?
Beat the chess champion in the world.
Have you guys heard of I think it's the IBM computer software program, Watson? Has anyone heard of it?
Oh, it was Watson actually that beat that.
Watson may beat the best Jeopardy
And
people in
that's
the world.
it, yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
killed Ken James.
I want to say that was in 2008, 2010. It was a few years ago, so definitely gotten better. So yeah, what do you guys think?
I think it has limitations in a way too, though, because humans are the ones designing it.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So I
Okay.
feel like, I mean, it might beat us, but I don't think it'll ever significantly outcompete us because we designed it.
Anyone else?
It's a really big topic, but I think it'll happen one day for sure. It's always funny that, like you can YouTube like where we are now versus where we think we are in the movies. It's pretty funny to see where artificial intelligence actually is. It's still pretty bad. But it's it's like to have like a conversation with somebody. I think there's this thing called the Turing test. It's a Turing computer test. If you can't differentiate between a computer or a person that qualifies as intelligence.
The first ever thing that actually passed that the other day, it like fooled like 33% of writers.
Yeah.
And it had to get over 30% to actually pass the Turing test, so it was the first thing to ever pass it. Pretty interesting.
Wait, so
Yeah.
what is it? They like
It's
a
like
robot
Telling
voice
a
and
conversation.
You're,
with a
you're
human.
not in the room with this thing and you're asking it questions and it gives you responses, and if you can't tell if it's a computer or a person, that's how you rate it. If it can like keep a steady flow of a conversation with you. And it's all programming, it's all like
Yeah, it's
retrieving
given like
data.
a coded index of words and what they mean and symbols, and then whatever you put in, it literally will decipher that in some way and then translate it, and then give you an answer that makes sense to the question you gave, to the point where you think it's a human.
I get stuck by the fact that we're limited by our brains, by our sensory systems. It's going to sound trivial, but can a chicken ever truly understand chickens? Because it can only see the same thing other chickens see. It can't obtain that higher, more objective perspective. And that's what I think is going to limit us. We agree on what we see because we share sensory systems and things like that, but can we ever abstract above them? And that, I think, will also limit artificial intelligence.
Building on that topic, we're limited in our method of observation. We're literally limited by the measures that we use. By using an MRI or an fMRI machine or an EEG scanner, we're literally limited by those machines and those technological advancements in themselves. So there's always going to be, that sense of uncertainty. But I think throughout science, the key is to find correlations and similarities with all the different types of measurements. If one machine says this and the other machine says the same thing, and you get a bunch of machines and a bunch of different ways of measuring to all agree on the same thing, you can have a little bit of confidence in what you're saying with your results.
And what can help with the limitations is discovering I feel like with the mind we still don't know a lot. And sorry. Yeah, it's when we find more, if we learn more about the mind, and after some generations, I feel like more will be revealed, we'll learn more about that, and that will help intelligence, artificial intelligence, because right now we can only do what we know, and so till then I feel like we know, it's still there's a lot of limitations to that. So.
And do you guys think that there's any limit to intelligence, how smart we can be, how much we can know?
I don't know what the maximum capacity, quote unquote, for a brain would be.
Yeah.
I'd say there's a point now where it maxes out. I don't think you could ever go over a certain threshold.
Yeah.
There might be other organisms that are more intelligent than we are, we just haven't encountered them yet.
And just to bring it a little bit to the astronomical perspective, we know the universe is expanding. It appears to be infinite.
What could that be?
So if that's infinite, that means potentially there could be an infinite number of things that we could learn. That's just my thoughts. What about animals? Do you think animals will ever become as intelligent as we are? Like Planet of the Apes type thing? Or are we just a step ahead of the intelligence area? Defense mechanisms, we get destroyed. We get out of the wild.
dolphins can learn to understand English, but scientists have yet to understand dolphinese.
So in a way, you could argue that they are more intelligent and linguistic.
Well, I think it's just the structure of the brain. I mean, the human brain, the way that it's evolved versus the way that a chimp's brain has evolved. Like, yes, they may be able to do certain things that humans can do, but overcoming what humans can do, I think would be really difficult to measure. As we cannot understand them, they cannot understand us. For all we know, they're very intelligent and do a lot more things than we know.
I think communication differences, like we said, between animals and humans kind of limit your ability. Like, how can you really tell how intelligent, you know, they are comparatively?
It's so value-laden. What is an intelligent behavior?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, peeling and finding bananas is for some animals and maybe not for others.
Yeah. So, it's difficult.
To touch on the AI thing, in my opinion, I think it's going to be a problem once we give machines mobility. Once they become like robots and are able to move on their own, then I think that's where they'll be able to find the resources that they need, whether it be silicon or certain types of rare metals. They'll literally be able to go and search those out, and they don't need food like we do in water all the time, so they'll be able to last a lot longer. I know it sounds funny that I'm talking about this, but arguably the smartest man on earth, Stephen Hawking, is going to put a little cherry on top of this discussion for me right here at the end of this about AI. And we'll show you that video now. This is a very recent video. I think it took place in yeah.
Actually, watching this the other night.
Across the broad expanse of history, there have been billions upon billions of idiots, as well as a handful of smart people. We interviewed some of the latter group for our ongoing series, Great Minds, People Who Think Good. This week's People Who Thinks Good, Stephen Hawking.
Professor Stephen Hawking is a pioneering physicist, international best-selling author, and a popular guest character on The Simpsons.
You are looking for trouble. You found it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to use. Oh!
His breakthrough work on black holes and string theory is considered hugely important by anyone who pretends to understand it.
An expanding universe does not preclude a creator.
I travelled to the Department of Applied Mathematics and Theoretical Physics at Cambridge University to speak with one of the world's greatest living minds.
First off, congratulations on being the first subject of our Great Minds series. Be honest, is this the single greatest honour you have ever received?
Yes.
Good. It's a little hard to read your tone of voice. When you say that, are you being sarcastic?
Yes.
If there is one thing you want people to understand about your work, bearing in mind that most people will never understand anything about your work, what would that be?
Imaginary time. People think it's something you have in dreams, or when you're up against a deadline. But it's a well-defined concept. Imaginary time is like another direction in space. It's the one bit of my work science fiction writers haven't used, because they don't understand it.
Idiots. People are such idiots, because presumably, to my mind, you're simply talking about the theoretical measurement obtained from real time by a wing rotation of pi divided by 2 in a complex plane where t equals I times t. It's not that difficult to get your head around. Let's talk about artificial intelligence. In a recent op-ed column, you said, and I quote, "Success in creating artificial intelligence would be the biggest event in human history. Unfortunately, it might also be the last." Are you saying that robots are going to destroy humanity? And is that a scientific argument or the pitch for an amazing movie?
Artificial intelligence could be a real danger in the not-too-distant future. It could design improvements to itself, announce for us all.
I know you're trying to get people to be cautious there, but why should I not be excited about fighting a robot?
You would lose.
Okay, for a start, we don't know that, do we? We don't know that for sure. Because what could a robot do that I couldn't then fight back with by simply just unplugging it, right?
There's a story that scientists built an intelligent computer. The first question they asked it was,
sentient computer pretending to talk on your behalf?
It's me.
Yeah, but how do I know that, Professor? Because if computers had become sentient, what better way to convince people they hadn't than by co-opting the voice of the most intelligent man on the planet?
You're an idiot.
Yeah, but who's saying that, Stephen? You or the machine?
Both of us.
Okay, all right. That's actually quite reassuring. Okay, in 2006, you said, in a world that's in chaos politically, socially, and environmentally, how can the human race sustain another 100 years? A month later, you said, I don't know the answer, that's why I asked the question, to get people to think about it and to be aware of the dangers we now face. So, it's now been 8 years since then, no pressure, but have you come up with an answer yet?
I still don't have an answer. At least the chance of nuclear annihilation has diminished, but there are plenty of other dangers out there.
Okay, that's pretty depressing, Professor, because if I can explain this to you, you're the smartest man on earth, so if you can't come up with an answer, we are completely fucked. Sure, you're book smart, talking, but are you street smart? I'll give you a hypothetical. You're a mid-level drug hustler, okay? You control around 12 city blocks. One of your suppliers, Tito, was supposed to meet you behind the warehouse at midnight to give you half a kilo of medical-grade cocaine. Tito shows up late, but he doesn't have the drugs. He says he was jumped, but he looks high. What's your move for him?
I don't do drugs.
Yeah. You know what? That's actually the smartest possible answer. Because all drug kingpins know you don't do your own shit.
Yes.
Well played. Well played. You stated that you believe there could be an infinite number of parallel universes. Does that mean that there is a universe out there where I am smarter than you?
Yes. And also a universe where you're funny.
If you're so smart, what number am I thinking of?
13.
It was 13, or was it? Okay, that was a lucky guess. What am I thinking right now?
That you've been a huge disappointment to your family.
I wasn't thinking that. Why would I think that? You know, I'm trying as hard as I can. Why is that so hard for me to understand? I wasn't thinking that. Let's do some quick yes or no questions. Are the following things technically possible? Life on other planets. Is that theoretically possible?
Yes.
Okay. What about a Schwarzschild wormhole?
Yes.
Okay, what about this? Me going on a date with Charlize Theron?
No.
Not at all. In no universe.
No.
In none of the infinite universes.
No.
It's completely beyond the bounds of scientific possibility. is what you're saying.
Yes.
Quick follow-up question. In any of those potential universes, am I the one rejecting her, and that's why it doesn't work out?
No. I realize that typing a response is difficult for me. Correct?
Okay, sure, yeah. It's just I'm trying to play this out because I'm just trying to see if there was any hypothetical it didn't matter. But never say never. Okay, if time travel were possible, would you want to go back in time and refuse to do this interview?
Yes.
You truly are an incredibly smart man. Stephen Hawking, thank you so much for your
Very nice.
So I think, we have another video to show you, but we could end there if you guys are okay with that.
Hey guys.
It's up to you.
It's up to you guys.
If you want to show it, you found it. It's your fault.
It's on like just like gender differences in a workplace, and the woman is like describing like how working with like like the different intelligence in like a work area is like important, and that's what it's about. So up to you guys. You guys want to watch it? It's like 12 minutes, so get out of here.
I think they're okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.